All right, Shalom. Before I begin, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. I would like to say double honors to my teachers, the apostles, and elders and bishops of Great Millstone that rule well and teach well. And I'd also like to say Shalom to the elect, the brothers out there of the hopeful elect that are preaching this word in truth and sincerity. All right, so I'm the brother Shaquat from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal. I began, by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. Basically translating that meaning Yahweh, the name of the Heavenly Father, Bahashem, and the name Yahushai, the name of his beloved Son. Those are the true names in the ancient Hebrew, and I began by giving all praises to them because it's through them, through the Heavenly Father and the Son that I'm able to do this lesson, right? And this lesson that I'm going to be getting into today, once again, an in-transit impromptu lesson, is going to be going into health, right, and the importance of it, right? Because the condition that we're in at the moment currently is a bad condition, as a nation, right? And not only us, the nation of Israel, the so-called Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans, but these other nations as well, right? The current state of the earth is at the worst that it's ever been, man. And that's because the current ruler is destructive by nature, man. Right? And that current ruler is the so-called white man, and his biblical term is, he's known as Esau. Right? So because he's the one that has the earth in possession at the moment, right? And a few characteristics of him are that he's destructive. Matter of fact, let me get a quick precept to begin, to start off the lesson. All right, this is Hebrews, it's like your Habakkuk. Yep, Habakkuk chapter 2. And I'm going to start at verse 4. It says, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith." Right, and this soul which is lifted up is not upright in him is speaking about the so-called white man, right? Meaning he's not straight, right? He's not he's crooked, like the scriptures say, right? He's made perverse, because what we also have to understand is that what we're living in is a movie, right? And this is the movie of the Heavenly Father, right? And just like any other movie, there's different characters, that are made to fulfill particular roles, right? And just like in any movie, there's always that one character that's made to fulfill the role of being hated. Everything he does is geared to make you hate him, man. Right? No matter what. And that's the case with the so-called white man, right? The Heavenly Father has made him to be hated. And that is why his spirit, his soul is not upright. It's not right. It's crooked, man. It's crooked. Right? And you hate someone like that. Someone that's not right. Because when you take a look at the earth at the moment, it's not being governed and ran the right way. Right? The food is polluted. The water you drink is polluted. The air, that you breathe is polluted. Right? Depression is at an all-time high. Right? The earth itself is at a decay because of how the white man is ruling and running it, man. And he's hated for that. deep down, whether people know it or not, they hate him, right? Because every sigh, every, annoyance that they have ultimately points back to him, right? Whether that may be, fuck, man, I'm late on my rent because my job is not paying me enough, and so on and so forth, because it's expensive. That goes all back to the so-called white man. Everything points back to him, right? Because he's destructive by nature, man. Verse 5, it says, yea, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, right? So the so-called white man is as death, right? And death is destructive, right? Death, you decay when you die, right? And that's the condition of the earth right now, is decaying at a fast rate because of how the so-called white man is ruling, how he's running it, right? Because there's a way for you to run the earth. There's a blueprint that's been left behind, man. And that's through the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, man. But guess what? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, he's not uplifting and living and governing the earth through the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, man. Hence the reason why the earth is in a decaying state, right? And with the earth being in a decaying state, man, us knowing this, is good for us to the best of our ability, to try to basically, go against that, man. Even though we know we can't to the fullest potential, we try our best, right? And how do we do that? Is by taking care of ourselves, man, right? Taking care of our health, our mental state of being, right? Because there is steps that you can take to bettering yourself, man, as a person, right? There's steps for you to take to not be depressed, to not fall under the the state of like everybody else, man. Just because the earth is polluted and destroyed and everything is genetically modified, doesn't mean that you have to feed into that. You can actually try your best to, take care of yourself, right? So let's go from there to the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus 30, and I'm gonna start out verse 14. It says, better is the poor being sound and strong of constitution than a man that is afflicted, than a rich man that is afflicted in his body, right? So it's better for you to be poor and sound of constitution, right? In other words, for you to have a sound mind, a peaceful mind, and a functioning body, and a healthy body, than for you to be rich and just be constantly afflicted with sickness, man. So yeah, even though we're in this low condition, we're in this low state, that does not mean that, okay, we just feed into whatever, man. We can actually take care of ourselves, by eating right, working out, taking care of your body, and so on and so forth. Because the scriptures speak about, I believe it's in the same chapter, later on down, but the scriptures speak about how that, a sound body, cannot be compared to any amount of riches, man. And this body that we have, is the temple, especially us being Israelites, the Heavenly Father's children. This is a temple, right? And we're to take care of this temple to the best of our ability, because it's the only temple you have, right? So continuing on in Sirach 30, verse 15, it says, health and good estate of body are above gold, and a strong body above infinite wealth. Right, so, no amount of riches could amount to you having a good estate of a body, man, and a strong body, right? Nothing can amount to that. So, with us being in the truth, the best thing we could do, is maximize that. Maximize taking care of ourselves, our body, and our mental state of being, right? That should be something that we prioritize. And I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, right? In our top list of things we prioritize, man, because the truth comes first. That's of most importance, right? And taking care of ourselves should be close to that, man. A close second or third, or whatever, man. Right? It says, verse 16, there is no riches above a sound body, and no joy above the joy of the heart, right? And joy can come from you having a good body, man. Having your body in shape, your mind in shape. You can get joy from that, right? That's why the Apostle Paul, he spoke about bodily exercise profiting little. But, even though it profits little, it still profits, man. Right? It still profits, so you can maximize that profit to the best of your ability. Because things like that can actually, keep depression away, man, if you take care of yourself. Right? Yeah, and it's small little things, man, going to the gym, eating right, going on walks, riding a bike, small things like that, man. It says, verse 17, death is better than a bitter life or continual sickness. Right. So we don't want to fall under that bitter life, bitter, or in other words, depression, or continual sickness, right? Because you can become sick if you're eating bad, and you can have a bitter life if you're eating bad, if you're not taking care of yourself, man, to the best of your ability. It says, let me jump down to verse 22. It says, the gladness of the heart is the life of man, and the joyfulness of a man prolongeth his days, right? So it's not good to be in that depression or that bitter spirit, right? But, to the best of your ability, try to find joy in particular things, man. Extracurricular, if that's how you say it, because the truth is priority, right? There's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The ministry of Yahweh Shemashai is the priority, but you can do other things that can help add on to the truth, right? Because if you feel good, then if you take care of yourself, you're gonna be in good spirits to always do lessons, to always read, to always so on and so forth, man, right? If you're always joyful, but you can obtain joy through doing particular things, man. Working out, whatever, eating right, and so on and so forth. Other hobbies, right? Verse 23, love thine own soul and comfort thine heart. Remove sorrow far from thee, for sorrow had killed many, and there is no profit therein, man. Right? So there's no profit in continual sorrow, right? So yeah, man, that's pretty much the lesson, to the best of your ability, basically take care of yourself. And this message is for me once again, first and foremost. Alright? Hey, so with that, I hope this lesson was edifying. I want to say call Allah, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Once again, double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the elders, the great most of them. Shalom to the elect.